Where is Juan Soto going? It's a question that began circulating long before last season ended, and on the cusp of MLB's biggest offseason event, the winter meetings, it still has not been resolved. Soto's answer pertains directly to the Mets, whose offseason will largely be shaped by what the all-star outfielder decides. Soto's market includes the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Dodgers, according to industry sources. The Post's John Heyman reported Saturday that the Mets and Yankees have submitted bids in the $710 million to $730 million range. As the meetings begin informally on Sunday in Dallas, the Mets will be hoping an answer is near, allowing team officials to shape the rest of their offseason. Last winter, the Mets had to wait for Shohei Ohtani, whom they never seriously pursued, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, whom they courted heavily, to reach decisions before selecting a path. Both stars ultimately landed with the Dodgers. Now the Mets await Soto. The quest for Soto leads the list of things to look for with the Mets at the winter meetings. Here are for others. A resolution on Soto's status will allow the Mets to turn toward another of Scott Boras' big clients, Pete Alonso. In a normal offseason, one without a player of Soto's magnitude on the market, Alonso's free agency would be garnering many of the headlines locally. But all has been quiet on the Alonso front since the Mets played their final game in October, and the first baseman again expressed his desire to remain in the only organization he's known. Here's the question. Would Soto landing with the Mets increase or decrease the probability Alonso returns? On one hand, Cohen would have already spent a staggering amount of money to address the lineup and could place Soto between Francisco Lindor and Mark Vientos, with possible shorter-term solutions available for first base. The flip side is if you sign a player of Soto's caliber, why not raise the enthusiasm level to the hilt by bringing back a fan favorite who hit 37 homers last season? The Mets will look to add at least one, if not two, starting pitchers to complete a rotation that has added pieces in recent weeks. Frankie Montas, 2 years, $34 million, and Clay Holmes, 3 years, $38 million, are two low-risk additions the Mets are adding to Kodai Senga and David Peterson. Others in the mix include Tyler Megill, Paul Blackburn, and Jose Butto. It would be surprising if the Mets looked toward Corbin Burns or Max Fried. Another starter in that weight class, Blake Snell, received a 5-year contract worth $182 million from the Dodgers, but the team could look toward others looking to rebuild value, such as Walker Buehler or Mike Soroka. Sean Manaea emerged as an ace in the second half of last season for the Mets, but he could be looking at a contract well north of the deal his former rotation mate Luis Severino, 3 years, $67 million, received from the A's last week. The Mets were involved in one trade of note this offseason, acquiring Jose Siri from the Rays last month as essentially Harrison Bader's replacement in center field. Could the Mets find a deal for pitching or a potential DH without sacrificing top prospects? The X factor would be where Starling Marte, entering the final year of his contract, might fit if the Mets were to acquire Soto. The Mets could look to deal Marte and add a lower-cost fifth outfielder behind Soto, Brandon Nimmo, Tyrone Taylor, and Siri. Brett Baty's future with the Mets probably hinges upon whether Alonso returns. In a scenario in which Alonso resigns, Mark Vientos would remain at third base, likely squeezing out Baty. But the Mets still could retain Baty at AAA and look to build his trade value. Last winter, the Mets gave free agent deals to Adam Ottavino, Jorge Lopez, and Jake Diekman, and none really worked out. Lopez and Diekman didn't even finish the season with the team. But Stearns excelled in building the bullpen throughout the course of the year, adding pieces such as Phil Maton and Ryan Stanek. Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, and Butto, if he's not utilized as a starter, are known commodities in the bullpen, and familiar faces such as Sean Reed-Foley and Dedniel Nunez are working back from injuries. The team has signed a slew of relievers to minor league deals this offseason, but there is certainly a need for at least one or two established arms.